Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is the director of Optimum Scouting and contributor for the Sporting News, Eric Galko. Eric, nice to have you back on the program.
Absolutely, guys. What's going on?
We want to know what you think about Bronson Kaufusi and his pro potential. We'll reconnect with Eric Galko just a minute, get him in a better position. But again, the director of Optimum Scouting joined us to talk about Kaufusi's draft potential. Now, the Sporting News released an article all the way at the end of last year that had Kaufusi as the last pick in the first round, seeing projections now that he's a late second round guy.
So he's dropped. What happened? I'm just kidding.
Oh, my
I'm
goodness.
just kidding. Top couple of rounds and a day 2 pick is really good for Bronson Kaufusi. So here's the situation. I talked to Bronson Kaufusi at halftime of the Pepperdine game in Malibu. He went up there to see his brother play in that game. And he is in Irvine training and then left yesterday for Mobile, Alabama, where this week he'll participate in the Senior Bowl on Saturday. Now, how big are these games? I think that Ziggy Ansah got himself to the 5th pick. Some guys, it doesn't matter, but some you can really make a move. Now, Eric Galko now joins us. Eric, we were just asking, what do you think of Bronson Kaufusi's pro potential?
Yeah, as far as the guys down here at the Senior Bowl, you measure him at 6'6.5", 281 pounds, and has one of the longer wingspans of defensive linemen here. He's certainly going to be intriguing for NFL teams who want to see if they can either develop him to be a defensive end or outside linebacker in the NFL, maybe a 4-3 defensive end, or to be a guy to come in right away and kind of add some value in the run game and setting the edge as well as playing in space a little bit too. So he's certainly one of the more intriguing guys. His film, especially early on in the year, was a bit frustrating for a guy that has so much talent, that flashed so much over his career. I think the Senior Bowl is going to be a huge week for him to kind of leave that BYU defense and start impressing scouts in a different setting.
How much did he help himself during the second half of BYU season? Because from our perspective, he went beast mode for the last 5 or 6 games. So how much of a difference do you think that made in getting Bronson to where he is now?
Yeah, whether it was his own aspect or was the coaching staff kind of letting him go, he seemed a lot more comfortable to kind of just make his own plays and do more in one-on-one situations. I thought earlier in the year and years before that, he seemed to want to kind of fit himself into that defense and not make mistakes. I think towards the second half of the year, kind of sort of a bit more activeness, a bit more confidence in himself, and got more opportunities in one-on-ones and took advantage of them. So I think it's definitely a positive sign coming into the postseason and the draft season itself, because teams want to see how he can do away from that defense and in isolation, see how they fit him in their defense. He's such a unique athlete at 6'6", 281 pounds, and a guy who's athletic enough to play in space. Teams are going to want to mold him for what they want in their defense. So how he played the second half of the year in kind of isolation, doing his own thing more and more, as well as the Senior Bowl here, going to be huge for how many teams really covet him at the top of the draft pick.
He had been listed at 6'8". I know a lot of guys list their height and what they are in cleats or shoes. Then this morning, he's measured at 6'6" and 5'8". Is that a common occurrence that all of a sudden these guys are actually measured and then it's maybe a little shorter than what they thought?
I think it's actually more uncommon for guys to measure inaccurately what they are on the website as well. Really, the only thing I know for sure, Kansas State is very good at that as far as measuring guys and having it translate over. But outside of that, almost every school, if not every school, does that. So it's not a huge deal, usually for guys that kind of meet those thresholds or don't meet those thresholds because the measurement's an issue. But I think in his sense, 6'8", 6'6", he's still going to be one of the longer defensive ends in the NFL when he gets there.
Eric Galko of Optimum Scouting, contributor for the Sporting News and NFL draft expert, is joining us from Mobile, Alabama on BYU Sports Nation. If you had to put a lock-in pick for Bronson Kaufusi in the approaching NFL draft, I know it's late January and we're still like 3+ months away, but right now, where do you think Bronson Kaufusi would be drafted before the Senior Bowl?
Before the Senior Bowl is a good way to look at it because I think it could go either way here in Mobile. If I had to say right now, our current draft grade on him is a 5th-round grade. I think he's a day 3 guy and kind of a guy you have to figure out where to fit in, maybe take a year to redshirt and kind of develop him in your defense. But I think in terms of how he's measured out right now, what he'll likely do at the NFL Combine athletically as well, I think the 3rd round is not out of the question, maybe even late 2nd if he can really impress in the postseason. So I think right now, to be cautiously optimistic, it's probably 3rd or 4th round. A lot can change here in Mobile. A lot can change in the NFL Combine. But there's not many guys walking around who are almost 6'7", 281 pounds and can play as well in space as Bronson does. So I think in terms of just not enough guys on this planet can do what he can do, I think 3rd round is certainly a possibility.
We could affectionately call that the Ziggy Ansah effect, potentially, just where your intangibles and your physicality could help you rise in that way. What do you see from Bronson that could maybe help him go from what you said originally was maybe a fifth-round grade to getting up into, say, day 2 of the draft?
Yeah, for guys like him who are bigger and thicker and not necessarily speed rushers, how he does in those pass blocking and pass rush drills one-on-ones are going to be really important. At the end of the day, as a pass rusher, you've got to beat left tackles and right tackles and get to the quarterback and have the balance to finish the tackle. So how he does it, how fluid he looks and working on the outside, cutting back inside against a lot of talented offensive tackles here will be crucial. If he can have a good week in those drills, that'll be important. I think certainly in team drills, when he's working in the run game, if he can show he can hold the edge, not allow that big gap to open up and really keep running backs from getting in that area and letting linebackers and quarterbacks finish outside of them, that's going to be huge. So those are two really specific things. I think that's what scouts are looking for, see if Bronson Kaufusi can play defensive end in the NFL and how effective he can be there early on in his career.
Eric, I know that for obvious reasons we're spending a lot of time talking about Bronson because he's kind of the hot commodity coming out of BYU. But in terms of other guys that BYU has right now, what about a guy like Mitch Mathews, who is 6'6" and has had a couple of nice, solid seasons back-to-back? What kind of an opportunity would he have with his frame playing for an NFL team or getting himself to a place where he could try and get on a 53-man roster?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a guy like him who's a red zone threat who can jump up and catch the ball in space and in one-on-one coverage is going to be an asset to NFL teams they're going to consider in the draft process or afterwards. I think certainly how he looks physically, what a kind of bulk he has, and if he can really man up against more physical corners, an issue he kind of had despite being a bigger receiver a little bit and kind of getting backed off his route. So I think how he handles those things is going to be important in the draft process. But for a 6'3", 6'4" receiver, whatever he'll measure in at, with his jump ball ability, I think he can translate immediately to the red zone, especially in 3 and 4 wide sets. I think it's going to be an outside chance, depending on his pro day or the NFL Combine, how he tests to be a draft pick. But I think more likely he's going to be a camp guy who's going to have to earn a spot as kind of that outside jump ball type receiver early on in his career before he can kind of get comfortable in the NFL roster.
There's another guy on BYU's roster that could play for BYU. We'll see if he sticks around. But Taysom Hill is an intriguing potential NFL prospect. Where do you see him potentially or not fitting into the NFL next season?
Yeah, in terms of just raw ability, athletically playing on the perimeter, certainly the arm talent is super impressive. I think he has all those skill sets the teams want to develop. But in terms of NFL teams and how they're looking at quarterbacks now, it's a lot less of a project-driven league. You got to be able to come in right away and at least contribute as a quarterback. I think that's what Taysom Hill, whether BYU or someplace else, has to show this next season is that he can kind of come in right away, not be a project guy, kind of be refined and play in the pocket, play in the perimeter and be confident and be poised outside. So I think for the most part he has a lot to show in terms of refinement in his game and kind of playing within himself and running an offense and managing a game. But talent-wise, athletically, arm strength-wise, he has all the check boxes you want to hit for an NFL quarterback. And I'd say right now, looking at next year, he's probably in that draft pick mode already if he can kind of have a year at BYU or everywhere else where he's kind of playing under control.
Eric Galko, Director of Optimum Scouting, joining us. He's live in Mobile, Alabama right now, getting ready for the Senior Bowl. We've talked about Bronson Kaufusi and Mitch Mathews, now discussing Taysom Hill. You look at a guy like Taysom, and whatever you want to call it, bad luck, misfortune, he's had 3 season-ending injuries. So how much does that play into how the NFL scouts and teams would look at a guy and seriously drafting Taysom Hill?
Yeah, it'll be a huge issue, and teams don't want to have the injury guys because those things come back again. It's not that's going to impact his play necessarily, and I'm not sure it will impact his play next season entirely, but it's more of a factor of, will this guy keep getting hurt? And we saw, 8 starting quarterbacks in the NFL go down this year with injuries, whether it's season ending or most season. It's hard to come back from that. And have a backup quarterback like Taysom Hill will be out of the gate to the injury as well. It doesn't really help your roster. So the teams needing quarterbacks to be healthy, needing 2 strong guys on your team, if there's an injury concern, then it might happen again in the near future, it'll be an issue. But as long as his injuries aren't regenerative, we're not going to really disable him for the future and limit what he can do athletically or arm talent-wise, I think he could be okay, but it's going to be certainly a question mark and a ding against him when it comes time for the 2017 draft and teams are in the boardroom and deciding which quarterback we want to invest our future into a little bit. That's going to be one of the negatives that could rear their head and maybe push him down or out of the draft if teams feel it's an issue.
Eric, give us an idea of what goes into draft day, because there's actually playing on the field, which ultimately is what you do when you're on the field. There's the combine, there's pro day, there's Senior Bowl lead up, there's all this stuff, right? What goes into getting a guy drafted, especially this week for a guy like Bronson Kaufusi?
Yeah, I think it's, as I've gotten finding with more and more NFL scouts, the aspect of measurables and the combine numbers, though it's kind of brushed aside in the media, and people want to hate that because it's when we look at production and on-the-field stuff and watch these guys live, it's a huge part of the process. And there's not a whole lot of guys that don't meet certain height, weight, arm length, hand size measurables, or the 40-time measurables that teams look at and make it in the NFL. It's very few guys kind of are the outliers. So I think the measurables are certainly a huge part just to meet those thresholds. And then if you kind of meet those thresholds, then you look to the film. But I think more importantly, with the athletic testing combined with scouting report, combined with analytics, it's about where a guy has success in the field and also what those numbers tell him about his future there. So, for example, Bronson Kaufusi, a guy who's a 6'6", 281-pound defensive end, maybe playing outside linebacker situationally, it's not about how well he's explosive in the short area or how well he wins as a one-on-one pass rush on the perimeter. It's about, can he set the edge? Can he do this? Can he do things that his role in the NFL will be? So I think for Kaufusi, testing well athletically, in terms of the short shuttle, in terms of his 10-yard split, those things will be important to show he can bend it a little bit. But really, on film at the Senior Bowl, at the NFL Combine, and private workouts in April with NFL teams, can he set the edge? Can he play their defensive end spot? Or for 3-4 teams, can he work enough in space where he can kind of come down, hit a tight end, embrace a running back, and finish tackles in the backfield? Those type of things what teams want to see from Bronson Kaufusi especially, and that's how the whole process kind of fits together for guys like him and different players with different skill sets and different measurables.
For those that aren't familiar with what happens in Mobile, Alabama, besides the Senior Bowl, Eric, what is the must-do thing in Mobile, Alabama?
That's a good question. They have a big Mardi Gras celebration here. They kind of like New Orleans light a lot here, and great barbecue. That's what I'm going to be doing every day for lunch. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, so I don't get a lot of great barbecue up there. So I enjoy myself down in Mobile, Alabama, and there's a lot of the great places around here, and seafood especially too.
Hey, we wish you the best of luck with trying to figure out how to fit all that barbecue in during a very busy week.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks again.
Eric Galko, Optimum Scouting. Follow him at Optimum Scouting on the Twitter machine. Lead NFL draft analyst for the Sporting News.